think we wrote like a handwritten letter, and then we walked down there on one of our walks with the kids and went and knocked on the door, and nobody answered. We left a note on the door, like just taped the letter to his door, and 6 months went by, never heard from him. I'm like, well, he probably didn't live there, like whatever. It's
not his address.
And 6 months later, this random guy wanders into, I'm working on the house, like doing siding or something. And this guy just wanders up and kind of like,
I remember when this happened.
It was very awkward.
Like,
he was like, kept looking
right
and like,
now?
kind of like.
Welcome back to The Broke Billionaires, where we document our daily struggles in building wealth while raising a young family. Join us as we talk creative wealth building for everyday people and couples that are struggling in a down economy. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Joshua Masari, and we'll be your host.
Tonight we are talking about buying properties.
You can talk about this one. You love shopping.
I do love shopping. I like house shopping too, not just retail shopping, but no, I love finding properties. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, so let's start with a tool that we use to help us find the properties and evaluate them. And that is PropStream. Now, what PropStream allows you to do is get information easily and quickly on properties that you wouldn't normally be able to get without doing a lot of digging. All you do is you take an address, put it in, and it pulls all the data that's available publicly. So, all the county records. So, who owns the property? When they purchased it, how they purchased it, if it was cash or financed. And basically, you can get a lot more information than you can just going on Zillow or Redfin and looking at the history. So it also will automatically estimate what the payoff is if there's a loan. So it's an estimate. They don't know that for sure, but basically it takes when the loan started and what the average interest rate was at that time, and then calculates what the pay down would be to date. So it kind of gives you a rough estimation of what that might be. So PropStream's really been a big help to us in just locating properties, finding what the situation is on them, and also a little bit of the marketing too. It just makes everything easy, and it's not that expensive. It's $99 a month. So for all the investing we do, it's definitely well worth it. So that's a tool if you're going to be buying properties and doing this often. It's, and PropStream is not the only software that does this, but that's just one that we've found that's easy to use and we like it, and it's worked well for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk looking for properties, I think the first thing that comes to people's minds is either using a realtor, B, tools like Redfin, Zillow, things of that nature, which, yes, obviously you can absolutely find properties that way. But our goal is not to be finding properties that have hundreds of other people looking at them. When we were buying the last property, we had, I don't even know how many houses we put offers in on, that just, part of it was the market at the time getting outbid. Things were going for way over market. There was not a lot of inventory for how many people were shopping around for houses. But we ended up during that time, we can talk a little bit more about this later, but we ended up getting really creative with some of the ways that we were able to find some properties. It's not how we bought that house and how we found this one in particular, but it led us to some other leads, and it was a marketing tactic that we realized worked, even though it didn't work for the exact houses we needed at the time, but it's definitely something we've used since then as well. So we'll go into some of those topics tonight as well.
Yeah. For example, like everyone always talks about buying foreclosures and when a house goes into pre-foreclosure, so before it's actually in foreclosure, it does get notify, like MLS, or not the MLS, but like the county records show that it's in pre-foreclosure. And so all of these sites like Zillow and Redfin and PropStream and everywhere starts popping up that it's in pre-foreclosure, and the bank has filed the pre-foreclosure proceeding. It hasn't gone into foreclosure yet, but as soon as that happens, everybody and their mother knows that this house is in pre-foreclosure, right, and they're in trouble, and they're facing possible foreclosure. So once that happens, everybody, all these investors start calling. They've got, and these are investors that just do this. They have, marketing teams set up, and they've got people calling for them. They've got, mailers going out. So these people just start getting hounded as soon as they're in that situation. And you just got to figure out a way to separate yourself from the crowd and not be one of those millions of people that are calling and knocking on the door like, hey, you're in trouble. You want to sell your house? Just a quick disclaimer. The information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. Your individual circumstances may differ and require specific strategies not discussed here. Now, let's get back to the show. So, one of the ways that we've done that, there was a pre-foreclosure that we were interested in, and it was a triplex building, and it was in pre-foreclosure, and they'd probably been getting calls from everybody. And we did some research to find out who the owner was, and the owner had this property in an LLC that was in Wyoming, and it was very difficult to find out who they were and where they were because no information was listed publicly. They had used an agent for the LLC, so if you find out who filed the LLC, it was whatever attorney set that up. But they made a mistake, and I don't know how I came across this, but with an LLC, you have to file a statement of information every couple of years just to update your company information. Say, yeah, we're still in business. Here's the address, yada, yada. And the owner had filed that himself instead of using the attorney or agent to do that. And so because of that, his information was on record, and it was his office, but I had a name, a phone number, and an office address, and ended up...
You can do a lot with that information.
Yeah. So I don't know if he was still in that office or not, but I had a name, and I knew he was local, and I think we did a bunch of reverse look up on the phone numbers and name and address, and ended up finding an address. Funny enough, that it was actually on our street that we lived on at the time.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 houses down.
Couldn't have gotten much closer than that.
It was super random, and we didn't know if he actually lived there. So we went and I think we wrote a handwritten letter, and then we walked down there on one of our walks with the kids and went and knocked on the door, and nobody answered. We left a note on the door, just taped the letter to his door, and 6 months went by, never heard from him. I'm like, well, he probably didn't live there, whatever, it's
not
gone.
His address.
And 6 months later, this random guy wanders into, I'm working on the house, doing siding or something, and this guy just wanders up and kind of
I remember when this happened.
It was very awkward. He was kept looking and kind of started walking up, and we had people walking in, asking me hey, how'd you do this? What do you because I was working on doing a pretty big transformation on the house. So I did have a lot of people stopping by, and he was kind of looked like he was going to come talk to me, but wasn't. I didn't really know what was going on. So I just figured it was somebody wanted to ask questions about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And he finally came up to me and said, hey, a little while back, you guys left a note on my door. And I was like,
did you know immediately that that's what it was?
No, I don't remember. It took me a minute because I was just kind of who is this guy walking into the driveway? But once I realized what it was, I was like, oh my goodness, that was a long time ago.
You came in and told me this after, and I was like, no way.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that we had even dropped that letter off at that point.
Yeah. So with a pre-foreclosure, these processes can get dragged out pretty long. It's, it gets into the legal process, and there's a lot of protections that investors have, and they can move properties over into their personal name and get more protections. And so this had been dragged out for quite some time with his situation. It was a situation where the owner had gotten in trouble during COVID because of non-payment. And at least in California, people didn't have to pay rent, and you couldn't evict them. You had to just let it ride. But your mortgage kept coming. And they had to pay back rent, or I think maybe people got into programs and the government would pay the back rent, but it took a long time. So by the time you actually got that money, a lot of owners weren't able to make their payments because the bank wasn't extending that same courtesy.
Right.
So that was the situation. This ordeal had gotten dragged out, and he didn't know what to do. So he was kind of out of options. So he just walked in and said, "Hey, I don't know what you're looking to do, but I'm kind of out of options and just curious what you're looking for." And he wanted to keep the property. So after talking, we were going to do this through our 401k, and the strategy that we came up with was that the 401k was going to own a portion of the LLC that owned the property, and it would be a partnership. So he was still going to retain ownership, but he was going to sell off a chunk of equity to get everything caught up and get the property performing again. And long story short, it didn't work out. He had actually moved the property over into his personal name to avoid the foreclosure and to extend things. And because of that, the judge was not going to let him move it back into the LLC, which is the only way we could have made that transaction happen. So I don't know what ended up happening with that, but it was a situation that legally the judge wasn't going to allow it because he had to file bankruptcy to prevent the foreclosure. And with the bankruptcy judge, they weren't going to let him do that. So we kind of ended up at a dead end, but this went on for a while.
Yeah.
I want to say it was probably maybe 6 months to a year. We were trying to get this to go through.
And definitely a creative way. I remember when you told me the thought process behind that. It was
it was a very creative situation that
trying to figure that one out.
It was going to be some instant equity for us, and then continued equity growth and cash flow. There didn't cash flow a lot, but there was some pay down and there was a little bit of benefit there. But it was like a real creative, out of the box way of putting it together to where this owner was going to be able to keep the property and retain majority ownership. We also had to do it that way to prevent the tax assessment because this property had been in the family for several years and had very low taxes. And if it had sold or had a tax reassessment, the property wouldn't cash flow at all and it wouldn't make sense. So we had to be very strategic on how we were putting this deal together to make sure that reassessment didn't come into play. So that was one creative way that we just, writing a letter randomly, putting on somebody's doorstep. So that's a little out of the box. Not many people are doing that. A lot of investors and a lot of people that do this for a living it's all numbers for them. So they're just doing mass mailings and mass, cold calls, and it's just a numbers game for them. So they're not putting that kind of effort into things. But if you got something in your local market that you can do that, and it's a property you really want to go after, and you're able to separate yourself by doing that, I think that's a great play.
Yeah, anytime there's a type of personal touch, because like you said, like these people are getting hounded the second this goes live, and they're just getting so many calls, and
they're in a bad situation. They're already up against the wall. They're not
excited to talk to you.
Yeah, they don't want to talk. They've got creditors calling them. They don't want to. This is not something that it's not a fun situation for them. So talking to people that they don't know, strangers, about it is not. It's uncomfortable. So
yeah, I think having a bit more of a personalized approach can be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah,
for them at least.
So let's talk about some off-market properties, how we find off-market properties, because we do on-market and off-market, but off-market's nice because we don't have competition. So you can come up with a deal and not have to worry about getting outbid and trying to be the person to overpay for it, which we see around here a lot.
Yeah, we definitely do. A handful of ways. My personal favorite is driving around looking for properties. When I'm driving, I look for properties that, well, first I should back up and say I drive around a lot because we have 3 young children and they don't always like to nap at home. And so for me, this has been a great way to throw them in the car and drive around our local neighborhoods and, especially areas that we kind of have our eye in. All of our properties are within a mile or so of
our properties are about,
they're all very
like
close
triangle,
together.
Like a mile triangle,
but we like the entire city that we're in. And kind of like the next city over we look at. So I joke that I know this area like the back of my hand. Like I know everything that's on Zillow, I know everything that's on Redfin, but I also am very familiar with the streets from driving so much and looking for them. And when we're doing that, we're obviously looking for sale by owner signs. That's how we found this property. It was a sign that was in the front yard, because not all for sale by owners will be listed on Zillow or Redfin. Sometimes they are, kind of like for rent. I had found, before we started dating, lived in a great place on the peninsula in Newport Beach. And we found that from driving around, and literally just a for lease sign in the window. And I think that regardless of if you're looking for a rental or something to buy, those off market, where they kind of want more of a local person, is a great way to find these properties. But I really try to keep in mind, obviously looking for those types of signs, but a lot of times they're just properties that aren't maintained well, look like they might be vacant. There was a handful of those that we were looking at when we were really kind of exploring. Gosh, what was it? Was it Subject 2 that we were looking at that point?
I'm not sure which ones are you talking about.
The ones that were looking vacant, that, remember, we went through and we had like a whole list of them, and we were kind of running numbers, and
I think we were just trying to identify properties that might have like a value add.
Yeah.
And be in trouble, or somebody that just didn't want the properties or didn't need the property. They just wanted to get out of it. So we were just trying to find deals. Because at the time, these last few years, it was just such a hot market. Like anything hit the MLS had 20 or 30 offers on it, and it was just getting bid up. People were paying $250,000 over appraisal value, and it's just got crazy. So
yeah,
that's why we really started looking for off-market properties to avoid that.
Right. There was a point where I had a book that was just always in the car with me, and I had like pages and pages of addresses of like properties to go then take a look at PropStream and kind of do some research on. And
yeah, and sometimes when you're driving around, you'll just send me an address.
Yeah, I'm like, look it up. Here you go.
If I'm at the office and from my computer, I'll just pull it up real quick and give you the deets real quick on it.
Yeah, see if there's anything. But I mean, I've told you this now, like I'll still drive by these properties, and sure enough, I would say the majority of the ones that I had written down are now ones that have been bought. They're getting redone. They've already been redone. Like,
and they weren't for sale when you saw them.
They were not for sale.
No,
none of these were for sale.
So
they
you
just
identified
looked
them
like
before they actually turned over.
Yeah. So that's probably my favorite way personally of looking for them. You have a couple ways that you like to also.
Yeah. So back to the FSBO, the for sale by owner. There's a way that you can search these on Zillow. I didn't know this until the last property we bought, but I don't know if there was. I think there might have been a sign on this one that you had seen.
There was a sign, yeah.
And we were like, "How did we miss this?" And then we go on Zillow, and it's not there. But then I realized that there's a setting on Zillow. If you go into the filters, you have to change it from, I think it's called on market or something like that. You change it to for sale by owner, and it filters out all the on market properties and just has the for sale by owners. It goes from 200 properties to 2.
Yeah.
But you can actually filter it. So if somebody posts a property on Zillow directly and not through the MLS, so if with a real estate agent, your agent's going to put it on the MLS and then it flows through to Zillow. For sale by owners can also put it on the MLS, but you don't see that as often. Yeah, I think it costs like $1,000 to list on the MLS if you're just doing it as a private party. But on Zillow, you can just post it on Zillow directly, but they filter it out from the rest of them for whatever reason. And
we did not know that when we were. That would have been really good information.
So that's another So just go to that filter setting and click over to for sale by owner to see what's in your area. So
there was that other property too in our other neighborhood. I forget what happened. The mom, I think, had recently passed away. I remember we ran into the son and he was redoing the property.
Oh, yeah.
We had been calling on that one for a long time, actually.
Well, they had a for sale by owner sign out front with a phone number that didn't actually go anywhere. Yes. And what had happened
there's always something,
was the mother had passed away. The property was in a trust, and it was, I think, had gone into probate, or there was multiple children. They were trying to decide what to do with it or something like that. And they had to appease the judge or the court or appease somebody for whatever it was. they had to list the property or make it look like it was listed. And so that's why they had this sign out there, was because, oh, it's listed for sale, see? But they weren't actually selling it. They were like renovating it and trying to flip it themselves and sell it, which is funny because it ended up selling, I think, for what we would have paid for it. Like they couldn't sell it, and
they did work to it. They had renovated it.
Yeah, they spent a bunch of money on it, and they kept lowering it, and we're like, oh,
we would have bought it as is.
I mean, good thing we didn't, but
no.
So because I remember we were driving by and the guy was out there, so I went and walked the property with him, and it
was a funky layout too. Weird kind of.
Well, it was like a 7-bedroom or something, but it looked like a single story from the front and a small,
it was very weird.
But then it kept going back and back and back, and it was a strange property. But
that was another example of a for sale by owner that was not listed anyway.
So a way that I like, and I've actually done quite a few deals this way, is I have a lot of Facebook groups that I'm involved in for real estate, and they're mostly like seller finance or creative finance. There's a few sub-2 groups, but they're just these national Facebook groups with all these people networking and posting deals, and most of it's garbage. There's a lot of deals that are just, wholesalers trying to make a quick buck, and there's just a lot of deals that aren't deals. So you really got to be careful and sort through it. But every once in a while, there's something that comes across there that's decent. I have a buddy that I've partnered up with and actually found in one of these groups. He had posted a property that he found, and it was going to be a flip, and it was a seller finance. I think it was like a delayed balloon that he got. It was like no payments or something for a year, no payments, no interest, or maybe deferred interest. And it was going to give time to renovate the property and then sell it. And I ended up coming in because there was 2 partners, and they needed money for the rehab. So, I reached out because they were local here. And so I reached out, and we ended up hashing out a deal, and we formed a joint venture, and the deal never went through. It was some weird situation where the house was in pre-foreclosure, or maybe it wasn't pre-foreclosure. It was like taxes. I think the taxes were behind or something like that. And like one of the owners was an international person who didn't live in the country and couldn't get there to sign. It was a really complicated situation, and that dragged down for a while, and it never come into fruition. But that was just something I found in one of these groups. There was the apartment building we bought. I actually found there was a wholesaler that's a pretty reputable wholesaler that specializes in seller finance apartment buildings. And he had posted something, and I was, at the time, this was right after the triplex that the foreclosure we were talking about earlier didn't work out, or we kind of knew that it wasn't going to work out. So I kind of started looking for another opportunity, and this came along and ended up working out, and we ended up acquiring this building. And that was a seller finance. It was actually a wrap, but that was a seller or creative finance deal that we did. And that wholesaler ended up sending me another deal a few months later on a duplex, and that was a sub-2, and ended up buying that one. So that was just from some Facebook groups. And wholesalers there's a lot of them out there. There are a dime a dozen. Most of them are, you got to find, there's reputable ones and there's non-reputable ones. So you got to be careful, but wholesalers can be a great way to find off-market properties, because what they do is they will identify a property. They'll get it under contract. So they'll do all the marketing and sending all these mailers and calling and finding these people that are either facing foreclosure or deferred maintenance and don't have the money to fix up their house to sell it, or whatever the situation may be. And so they'll get this property under contract with an assignable contract. So what they'll do is they'll assign it. So they get a property, they say, we'll pay you, X amount of dollars, whatever, $1 million. You got a property that needs some renovations, and let's say it's worth, 1.3 after renovations. So what they'll do is they'll get under contract for $1 million, and then they'll try to sell it for, 1.03. So they'll try to make $30,000 on top of the $1 million, and they'll sell it to you. They'll assign the contract to you with their profit on there. So you're still getting a good deal, but you didn't have to find it, and they're making their money on that additional bump that they're giving you. So it's a way to be able to find. Now, most of these deals, you got to close fast because it's already under contract and has a closing date. So you've got to close by the date. So when you come in on these, you've got a short period of time to do your due diligence and look into the property and close on it. So these are mostly cash deals, not necessarily meaning you have the cash that you're spending or your own cash, but you're getting hard money loan and coming to the table with cash. So it's not a typical finance situation.
I was going to say, before you said that, I was going to mention that this is just all of these strategies take time. Like none of these are very quick except for wholesale.
Yeah. So wholesale it does move fast just because of the nature of the situation. It's under contract. They've got a closing date. So that wholesaler that I got the apartment building from, the second one that he brought to me, I remember seeing an email. He had sent an email out about it. And I remember seeing it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's a new market and looks like it could be a decent deal. That wasn't, it was a pretty low entry fee to get into it. But I was really busy. I don't remember what was going on that week, but I think we had multiple properties in escrow, and I was really busy with work or whatever. And I think I flagged it, but I was like, oh, I'll take a look at it later. And I never did. I was so busy. And he reached out to me and said, hey, did you see that deal that I sent out? I'm like, yeah, I just haven't had a chance to take a look at it. And he said, well, let me know. I've got to close on it, Tuesday or whatever it is. And this is like a Thursday. And so I went and looked at it, kind of dug in a little more, and it actually seemed like a pretty decent deal. And so I called him back and said, look, I kind of need a little time to get this, figured out, but I don't remember what the situation was, or I think we were able to buy a little more time. I think the title company didn't get their ducks in a row and didn't have it ready to close. So he was able to like drag it out a little more. So I was able to get somebody in there to do an inspection, and ended up closing on this deal. It was a sub-2 duplex and had a great interest rate. I think that the rate's like, I want to say like maybe like 4% or something. So it's a pretty low interest rate, and ended up being a pretty decent deal. But I was a go-to buyer that this wholesaler knew would perform because we had just bought the apartment building. So, he knew we were good for closing on deals, and actually came to us to, do another deal.
Yeah.
So, so wholesalers can be good. But again, there's a lot of bad ones out there too. So you do have to be careful. They like to pump up their numbers like, oh, this $1 million property is worth $2 million. And
right.
If you know the market and it's not worth $2 million, they're like, it needs $80,000 in rehab and it's worth $2 million. Like,
yeah.
Sounds too good to be true. It's probably too good to be true. So they definitely pull a lot of numbers out of their back pocket. And, but there are ones that actually have backup, and they'll show the comps, and they'll show, if it's an investment property or building, they'll show the T12 financials, which is what it's been doing over the last 12 months. And the ones that have all that documentation are usually they're pretty together and professional and a lot more trustworthy because they're actually backing up the numbers that they're talking.
Yeah, definitely.
And another place is just Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. I bought another duplex in South Carolina.
I was going to say, those are mostly your out of state ones though. You haven't done anything here,
yeah.
Right?
I don't think here you see that here so much. Yeah. It's kind of market specific, but I definitely bought a duplex on Craigslist. And it was just a local girl.
Like that long ago.
Yeah, it was like 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. But she just had it posted for sale by owner on Craigslist, and just didn't want to be a landlord anymore. And it was just this is the only one I've ever bought off of Craigslist, but I still check it every now and again because I've found deals on there. So Craigslist is not dead yet. And then Marketplace is there's some deals on there, but there's a lot of junk on there too.
I was going to say, I feel like it's a lot of scams.
Yeah, you get a lot of scammy stuff. So you really got to be careful and kind of sort through everything. But I think I've had with Facebook, I think I've had better luck just in the groups because there's a lot more, investor and like-minded people in those groups. So you get a little better I think better deals that come through there. But still, there's still a lot of junk in those as well. So you got to be careful of that. But that's a few different areas where you can pick up some off-market leads at least, and go after some of these properties.
Hey guys, if you're finding value or just want to follow along on our journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. That would help us tremendously. You can also follow us on Instagram @TheBrokeMillionaires and be sure to share with your friends. Now let's get back to the show.
Let's talk about on-market properties though, because we bought on-market properties, and so what are some of the strategies we use for on-market properties?
Expired listings. That's probably one of them. Expired MLS listings. Properties.
Expired listings. A realtor, when a realtor has a listing, it's for a set period of time. It's usually like 60 days, 90 days, 120, whatever they have. When that contract expires, if they don't sell it, the seller can choose to renew with them or just let the contract end, and then it goes off the MLS. They can find somebody else or whatever. But on PropStream, you can actually see a failed listing. And what a failed listing means is that it was under contract with a realtor for X amount of time and they didn't sell it. So that's a good way to find maybe a motivated seller that has been trying to sell a house for a while, might be a little discouraged and might be a little more motivated to sell it now and take a lower offer or do something creative.
This is, again, where getting personal really comes into play, and picking up the phone and calling those owners and just understanding what their situation is. We've done that a lot actually, and tried to really understand and see if, there's a way to make a deal that makes sense for both parties.
Yeah. So you gotta pick up the phone and we've done it several times. Sometimes it's a little intimidating, but you just got to do it and just see where it goes.
Especially if there's like a lot of price reductions. We notice that a lot too. Like someone who's motivated to sell, but it's just not selling. Like you really want to understand like what their motivation is and what
and find out too, because there may be some situation with the property why it's not selling and why they're having these reductions. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but the general market may think it is a big deal. But to you, it's like, oh, we've seen this before. We can handle this. So you can get a good deal on something that you're comfortable with
that
whatever
scares
that
other people.
Yeah.
I think too, a lot of people, at least in our market, they are not wanting to take on big renovations, right? Like small things.
Yeah, they want more
turnkey. Yeah. So that's another.
Yeah. So we come in and we're willing to take on a bigger project. So we may be able to find a deal that works for us, but not everybody else. So you come in and you can be their knight in shining armor, but you're getting a good deal. So it's kind of a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing I have here is be the go-to for, the performing buyer for realtors and wholesalers. So we talked about the wholesaler earlier, like closed on that deal. He brought us another deal just because he knows that we were a performing buyer. We actually were serious and closed on a property. So we got another opportunity because of that. I talked to a lot of realtors too. We're not anti-realtors. We just don't.
We don't have one specific one we work with.
Yeah, I wouldn't even really say that. We just have, we go direct to the listing agents a lot because one, it speeds up the process. So you're not having to find an agent to go and get a hold of the listing agent and then relay the information to them and they relay it back. By going direct to the listing agent, you can speed up the process because you're talking to almost a source. I guess they still have to run by the buyer, but they already know what the buyer is willing to do and what they're open to. So you can kind of get some quick, back and forth negotiating or really fill out the situation a lot faster by just going to the listing agent. And we've done this several times where we'll have the listing agent dual represent. So you don't have to have an agent on both sides. They can dual represent, and they represent the buyer and the seller. They do have a obligation as the listing agent. They have an obligation to the seller, so they're not going to like go behind their back and do something like that. But so they gotta kind of play both sides and be almost non-biased in the situation. But they're gonna give you more information than you would get the other way. Like they're not gonna play as hardball as much because they want to get the deal closed. And if you're a buyer, they know it's an easier deal when they're dual representing. Not all agents will do this. Some don't feel comfortable doing it. But we've found that the ones that are willing to do that, it definitely makes it an easier process. And we've had situations where, like the last property that we bought during COVID, the listing agent had this property that fell out of escrow, and he had it for a while, and he wanted to move it, and then they wanted to get this deal done. And so he was kind of pushing the seller a little more and pushing the situation through. He ended up chipping in because when you dual represent, they get all the commission. So they get double commission. So he ended up contributing, I think, most or all of the commission on our side to make the deal happen.
Yeah.
So he had that.
He was awesome.
And he wouldn't lose any of his commission that he was originally going to get because he still got the listing side. So that gave us an extra bargaining chip to be able to have that dual representation and be able to throw those commissions in to make that deal work. So that's one advantage. The other is just the speed, just going direct to the source and just hey, where do we need to be at? Let's just get this deal done. And it's just, I mean, not everybody's going to feel comfortable with this. If it's your first time buying something, you might not feel comfortable with that. We've done this a lot, so we feel comfortable with that. But I think we also do a lot of research and a lot of due diligence on properties that even some buyers agents don't do. So I think we feel pretty comfortable, like, going into these properties and doing our due diligence on the property, and we know how to do that. We go to the city and pull permits and find out.
I was going to say, that reminded me of that property in our other neighborhood that we were in escrow in that one, the permitting issues.
Yeah, this property was like, it was being sold as a 2,000 square foot 5-bedroom house, but after pulling all the permits and going back 80 years to when this was just
wasn't permitted.
It was a little farmhouse on a field.
It was literally the first house in
Costa Mesa.
Literally.
Yeah, it ended up. So we put it all together and figured out with what was permitted. This 2,000 square foot 5-bedroom house was legally like a 900 square foot 2-bedroom house or something. It was like not at all what was being sold.
Remember there was that interior room that had no windows?
Yeah, it was a room
we
inside.
knew that. That was our...
It was like a closet they were selling as a room, and it had no egress. It was
so bad.
Super sketch. So I feel like we've done this enough and we feel comfortable enough knowing that we're not getting ourselves into a bad situation. Right. So that is part of it. Is you gotta kind of know what you're doing and feel comfortable enough that you're not gonna get yourself into trouble.
Definitely.
So that's probably it for on market strategies.
Yeah, we have some marketing strategies we like too. One that I was kind of referring to earlier in the episode that we've done a few times is we will send postcards to targeted properties or neighborhoods that we are interested in, and we, again, personalize them. Like, we let them know we are... Yeah,
it's not like a postcard you'd see from a normal, like, wholesaler or investor. Right. It's like, oh, pay cash for your house.
Yeah,
like,
not like that.
Buy it, we'll close in fast close, call us today.
How many
times
a week do we get
those all the time? But, we did a postcard that had, our family photo, like, hey, we're looking for our next house. And we were looking at the time, the 2 times we did that, we were looking for our next primary. Because a lot of times, not all of our properties, but a lot of times we'll buy a property and we'll move into it and renovate it while we live there, get better terms on the house. And then once it's renovated, then we'll move out and start renting it out.
Right.
So we were actually looking for a primary. So we weren't lying about it, but we were being very open about it and being, hey, here's a picture of our family, our growing family. We're looking for the next property.
We've done that twice.
Done it twice, yeah.
Yeah, so we did it before we purchased the last house. Mm-hmm. And that house did not come from a postcard, but we did get a number of calls.
The first time we did it, we probably had about, and I think that one we had, I want to say it was our identified neighborhoods that were like 4-bedroom and bigger.
Yeah.
And I think we were looking for ones that had equity. So it was like anybody that had 50% or better equity or something like that. So we probably had about 20, maybe like 25 to 30 people that called.
Yeah.
And there was a few that were pretty serious, but most of the properties were people that were getting ready to list on the MLS. Yeah. So they were already looking to get like retail. It wasn't going to be that good of a deal.
Right.
But we did get first shot at those and we were able to look at them and look through them to see if it's something we're interested in because, we could have bid on those before it actually went to the open market. So at that time, this is when, 2020, when properties were hitting the market and you get like 20 or 30 well, this might even be before that. This is before COVID when we did the mailer. It was like 2019.
Was it?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe it was because that's when we were really having the problem. When
it might have been. Yeah, because we were just kept getting outbid. So that's what we came up with. And and we started getting all these leads on properties that we're not deferred maintenance or value adds. We were really looking for a fixer upper that we could really add some value.
Yeah.
And I don't think we didn't get that, but we got a lot of opportunities that were pre-market. So we could have bought these before they actually went to market.
Right.
And then we did this again last year.
In the neighborhood we're currently in.
Yeah, and there was a handful that we got, and we got a lot of realtors calling and just saying, hey, what are you looking for? And like, so that we were kind of like networking with the realtors, and then the ones that we got, I think there was one that we actually considered before we bought the one that we ended up going with. It was like our number 2 option, and that was from a postcard mailer. Yeah. It was a lot smaller. It was still a decent deal though. I think somebody actually bought that and ended up flipping it.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a good enough deal for a cash buyer to come in and flip it. But yeah, I want to say it had like an addition, and it was just a smaller house. The one we got was 2-story and quite a bit bigger. Yeah, and I think we paid close to the same, so we ended up getting a better deal. But it was still not bad for the time, and the fact that we were able to get that before it even went to market, because that one actually did go on the MLS.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were looking at the house a few streets over from where we're at, after we were in the process of buying this one, and we were looking, it was the same floor plan, and we were looking at what they did, and that lady was like, I recognize you guys. How do I know you?
And she figured out, she's like, you sent us a postcard. Yeah. So all the neighbors like recognized us, and we're going to these open houses. Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that was the first time that
like, oh, your family's so cute.
You're like, oh, we did find a house in the neighborhood, actually.
Yeah, she was all happy for it.
Yeah, so. That was really fun.
It was funny.
What else? I'm trying to think of any other marketing strategies we've done.
Well, I mean, the postcards is one, but really, so when we're doing the postcards, we're doing more targeted. So this last time, I think we were doing like 4 or 5 bedrooms. Like we were
pretty neighborhood specific on this one too. There was like
this time we used PropStream to get our list. Mm-hmm. So we would narrow it down, the neighborhood we wanted, how many bedrooms we were looking for, and you can even do it by how much equity is in the home. There's a lot of different things you can do, like narrow that list down. And then we actually used PropStream actually has this marketing tool where you can actually put together your postcard on the website, and then you just click mail to this list, and then you just pay, whatever it is, postage plus 50 cents or something like that. And they print it and put it all together. So whatever, it was cheaper and easier than going and get, because I'm a printer. So I last time I did it all myself, but it was through the website. It was may cost the same, but it was just so much easier to not have to deal with it and just do it all with one click. So we used PropStream for this last mailing that we did. So being able to do that, not have the competition, and then trying to find owners that are in trouble before anyone else knows. So again, when something is in pre-foreclosure, everybody knows it's in pre-foreclosure, and they're all going after it. So if you have a specific neighborhood that you want to be in, if you just start marketing to all the houses in that neighborhood that fit your criteria, so if it's a bedroom count or square footage or whatever it may be, if you
properties that look like they're
but not even that. I mean, that's part of it. That might be a better lead, but if you got a neighborhood with 400 or 500 homes that are identified, or a couple neighborhoods, let's say you have 500 homes that you've identified that fit your buy box, and you just start marketing to them and sending them a postcard, every month or a couple months, you're going to get some leads, because with 500 people, someone's going to run into trouble, someone's going to want to sell. You're going to get people when they first start thinking about selling, even if it's not like a flip type property or a fixer upper, you might get those opportunities before they hit. You might even be able to get, so the idea is to get them to call you before they call a listing agent. Because if you can work out a deal with somebody and buy it just direct from the buyer or from the seller and not have the realtor involved, well, now they're saving on realtor commissions. And in our area, realtor commissions on these properties are $80,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
So if they're able to avoid that and you can get that discount on the property, it just makes it that much better of a deal. So you got to get these people to either reach out to you or make contact with them before they go through the process and get it listed with an agent. So
definitely,
it also just gets you those opportunities before anybody else talks to them. So if you're just constantly touching them, you're going to have people that get into trouble in that neighborhood, or thinking of selling. There's just different scenarios, but you'll start to get leads. You'll start to get results, and especially doing it the way if you're not some wholesaler that's just doing, hey, cash for homes. Like it's a more of a personal touch, you're going to get. We've even had people call on it and be like, hey, this is really cool. You guys are doing this. I really hope you find something. We'll keep an eye out, let you know. So like people respect it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, what else do we have? So, and then again, if you have a property you really want to go after, just write a letter and go drop it off on their doorstep. Like that's probably the most effective way that you can really. So if it's something you identified or it has an issue, whether it's deferred maintenance or there's something that you're just like, these people are going to want to sell, like just if you can't get a hold of them on the phone, go even if you can get or do have their phone number, I think dropping off a letter.
Oh my gosh, definitely
like more impactful. So I think that's definitely a good way to go.
It's like we said, they get so many phone calls a day that you're no one special to them with a phone call, but a letter, it always goes a long way.
Yeah, and they're getting calls from investors. So the investors have all these virtual assistants that are calling from the Philippines, and they just get these calls. I mean, we get 3 or 4 of those calls a week at least. So there's no like personal touch to it. But when you have a family, a husband and wife and kids that are looking to buy a house, and that's the postcard you get from them, or you get a letter from this family, I think it definitely like gets their attention and separates you from all the other calls and marketing stuff that they're getting. So that's a real good way to just separate yourself and kind of give you more opportunities.
Definitely. I wouldn't do that though if it wasn't going to be a primary residence at any point.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to lie.
Yeah, don't do that just to get a property.
So the ones that we've done, when we've done this, it's always been because we were looking for our next house. Yes, they are investment properties, but we do move into them. So,
I mean, and we live in them for a decent amount of time as well.
Yeah, we do a couple of years in each one, typically. So, you definitely want to be honest about it. But if that's what you're looking for, that's a real good way of taking it. Or even if you are looking for an investment property and you bring, you come at it as, your family, hey, our family does this.
Yeah.
People kind of know that about us now, but you're saying, hey, this is what we do.
Just being honest about the situation regardless is,
But even if you're a flipper or you're looking to buy a property to renovate for a rental, coming from a family and not just some marketing agency or wholesaler that's got all these people randomly calling from the Philippines, it's still going to be a more of a personal touch.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that you can still set yourself apart by taking that approach.
Yeah. Anything else to add on that?
No, I think that kind of covers the different ways that at least, I mean, there's other ways of finding and attaining off-market properties, but that's what's worked for us and what we've used the last several years. And I think building relationships with realtors is important too, because they might have a property that's not going to do well on market because it needs work, and a lot of times if you go on market with a property and it's not financeable, it's a really tough sell because the general market's going to need to get a loan on it. And lenders aren't going to lend on a property that needs work or is, half demoed. So it's going to have to be a cash deal or hard money or something like that. So if you can work with realtors and kind of get on their radar that's what you're looking for when they have someone that, they have a seller that reaches out to them about a listing and they go and look at it and they're like, well, we can't really go in the open market with this. So, if they know you, they may just reach out to you and be like, hey, I've got a deal. We've got a few realtors in the local market here that'll do that. And it just gives you one more lead source to be able to capture deals before they go on the open market or because they'll still go on the MLS with it, but it'll be like cash only, not financeable as is. But then you got a bunch of investors that are all bidding for it too. So if it's just the more ways that you can be creative and get these leads before the competition enters the equation, I think that's what you're really trying to do here.
Yeah, that's the goal for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any books or podcasts that you like on this topic?
I think for podcasts, just going back to the Bigger Pockets, because they talk a lot about this. They call like the driving around, they call it driving for dollars.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember where that came from originally.
Yeah. But or at least a lot of the early episodes talk about identifying these properties that are not for sale yet, but potential off-market deals.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good podcasts or episodes of people that just do this and have a lot of good additional creative ways of doing that. And actually, one of the people on there, Jay Scott, he's been on several episodes, and he's a big one of the big authors of the Bigger Pockets Publishing, and he did a book called the Book on Negotiating Real Estate. I haven't actually read this one. I've had this for a while. I've been meaning to read it, but I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. And just being able to identify properties and negotiate these off-market deals and create value in the deals that you're buying. But this is a book that's highly recommended. So I think that's probably a good one.
Love it.
I think that's it for tonight.
All right.
All right. Well, get out there and make it happen.
Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Rebuilding the Dream Studios.